Hello, Doc. Welcome to this Easter weekend, the Saturday. When is it? When is it? Fourth of April.
Saturday, the 4th of April. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm, Maybe just to introduce myself again, Dr. Andai here. Taking neuroscience. Love to do neuroscience stuff with some bit of machine learning. hmm
Dr. Osebe with a high interest in computational modeling uh, and a pharmacist. Yes.
Okay, nice. So today we have another paper to review. 10 simple rules for choosing between industry and academia. But we want to add another spin to it. So we want to add the clinical spin to it. So probably it will be 10 simple rules for choosing between clinicals, industry, and academia. So should be an interesting talk. The paper was from 2009, I believe, by David Bissell, and it's an interesting paper. I think I've gone through it a couple of times, and I think these rules are kind of let me say general and universal in some way, especially for it can be a good reference point for early career medics who are trying to figure out beyond clinical what other things exist and what are the sort of like rules that they need to have at the back of their mind as they make this decision early on. I think that's where this paper comes in handy. All right. Any opening remarks, Doc, or we just dive straight in?
Um, I'm a fan of just diving straight in. I guess you have introduced what you're going to cover enough. So let's go. What are some of the rules, or what should someone be considering or looking at before they choose which way to go? Industry, academia, clinicals, like you said, we're going to add the spin of clinicals. After how many is it? How many is it? 6 years, 7 years, give or take, in med school.
Yeah, six. Nowadays, I would say it's even 7, 8 years because considering
It
this,
could go up to 8. Yeah.
considering the strikes, if a strike happens, God forbid, if you maybe retake a year. So the 6 years laid out in the curricula can take even more than that. So six is like the very, very bare minimum. So chances are you'll be taking 7, 8 years at the very least. So
Yeah, without the political barriers, it's 6. With the political uh, shenanigans that usually happen, I think, because you even have to, no, you still have to go for internship, and in between, you have to sort of wait before your process for that internship. There's a lot. Yeah. So, yeah, 6 to 8.
okay. So straight up rule one is assess your qualifications. And before you before you choose between industry and academia, the idea here is assess your qualifications. So this paper I think comes from the PhD perspective for people who have done computational biology. But one interesting bit here, as you've said, in these 6, 7 years, for an undergrad, perhaps your qualification is entirely obviously your undergrad training. So it's obviously your clinical training. So the question here is, given your clinical training, how much should that inform you to choose even between the other fields like industry and academia? Or at this point, is it even favorable for you to consider choosing these other two areas and your basic qualification is just in undergrad? I think that's some interesting way to look at it. Because when you come out of the blocks with an undergrad certificate, it's I think most of the time you just feel that your qualification is within that space. So I remember when people graduated and there was this long pause before being posted to internship. One of the very, very many questions for people were, what should I do before? before I'm posted. So you figure out you're in this space where your qualification is tied to whether or not you receive a practicing license. And given that you cannot receive a practicing license, that means your qualifications are more so not certified. So in this way, I'd like to think, what other qualifications can you step up to people with and say, I'm qualified in this area, given that I've been through this system for 6, 7, 8 years, but I don't have a practicing license.
Mm.
Yes, and then
But-
that,
No, no, just finish. Sorry.
And then I think that would be one of the interesting bit for you to start to think about. Okay, even if, let me say, I get even my licensing certificate, can that alone help me think about choosing between industry and academia?
I think what you're saying, Doc, is leverage. Yeah, like what's your leverage? Everyone who has finished with you, or each and every one of your colleagues, um, have no license. They are done with the undergrad. But what is your leverage really? What are you coming to the field with? What can you be able to look at in yourself and say, okay, I think I'll pivot to this because apart from my medical degree, I've also acquired ABCD, and I don't want to be very shallow and summarize all of them into skills. Skills is too general a term. What are skills? Because already you do have skills. There are medical skills that you do have, and so does every colleague of yours. So what is your leverage? Short. And when you talk about qualifications for an undergrad, apart from the degree, what else do you think uh, one should maybe arm themselves with uh, to have that advantage over the rest when they are trying to uh, choose between industry or academia, you know? So yeah,
I think what you've
you
mentioned,
you you wanna go first?
yeah, I think what you've mentioned, the aspect of leverage in this case is important because when we think about qualifications, I think most of the time we dilute this down to certification. But we see here that for you to now consider choosing, because the word there is consider choosing between clinical, industry, and academia, you need to figure out, okay, earlier on, where is your leverage at? Where is that place that you have some slight edge? And I think you sort of gave a hint to this, but you did not relate it down to skills. But I would argue that skills is one of the first thing that can make you solidify or articulate your leverage for you now to maybe package it in a way that you can deliver it to someone. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about industry and academia, chances are you want to solve a problem for someone within that space. And then they'll ask you, okay, what are your qualifications? Then you say medicine. And then they will be sort of waiting for something else. Because at this point, maybe you are the leverage that you bring it from your clinical side or your clinical training for clerking patients, for administering drugs, won't be something that works within this space. So having that opportunity to experience industry and academia within the first instance, then for you, the proof of burden is to prove that you have a leverage that will set you apart from your peers. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. Let's conclude. I think the first thing to look at will be your qualifications.
Okay.
I'd give a very good example. There's a 50-year, or is he a 40? I can't remember. There's a 40-year student from the University of Nairobi. I know he's working for the one of the big startups right now in the country, AI startup. He's already a 40-year student. You can see that by the time he's done with the internship and all that, he has already had his toes dipped a bit in the industry sector, so he kind of knows where he's going, right? Uh, he's um he's an attaché of sorts in this startup. but he has already had the test. So I think the same would go for a student in his position who has maybe collaborated on a few projects in academia, maybe has done something with a professor or their lecturer, maybe submitted a grant, maybe co-authored a paper. By the time they are done with their studies, they do know for sure if it works out for them or not, depending on the experience that they have gotten and the feel of that environment. Yeah.
Okay. So just to articulate point one, when making this decision, number one is that you need to assess your qualifications, and your qualifications here with how it looks like for a medic would be, yes, you have your degree. Chances are now you've got your license, but for you now to start choosing between even industry and academia, you need to consider the leverage that you bring in. And this leverage can be founded in skills. So how do you develop skills that help you gain leverage? And how you can, one way you can also do this is through that experience that you get sort of an add-on within your clinical years. So that supplements maybe your clinical training and all that. So I think that sort of wraps up point one. So for rule two, is assess your needs. So at this point, when you're just done as an early career researcher, you want to choose between, again, clinical, industry, and academia. You need to assess your needs. And I think assessing your needs here is because these three routes offer different things at this point. And
Mhm, mhm.
yeah, so each one has a difference. For example, offer be either like within the people you interact with, either the monetary fulfillment that they bring. So at that point in time, I think one of the most important thing is, what do you need at this point? So I think how can I put it? I think articulating what you need at that point takes some really bit of self reflection. You really need to sit down and assess your current status and, okay, what do I really need? So more of introspection than anything. Mhm. Any words?
I think Daktari, I don't know why you are you're walking around eggshells on this. I was thinking you'd go ahead and give yourself as a very good man. Because I I know you've been in this before. I was expecting you to set a good example and just go ahead and mention. But yeah, I'd say you have said something very, very crucial. And more often than not, when we come across early career researchers and they're asking us, so what's about this field? How do I get into this field? Is it worth they are always talking about money, money, money. And I'd say, yeah, it's good to compare like the rewards of that field. For example, if it's industry versus academia, you're looking at monetary compensation, but also you should be looking at what else comes apart from the money. Do I have a career growth? And if yes, then what is the ceiling of this career growth, right? Apart from that, there's also the issue of flexibility. I know for the young generation, we love flexibility. You don't want to be somewhere where it's strict working hours where you don't have time to, you know, take time off and do your own thing or how can I call it, be creative or anything like that. And there's also the aspect of, okay, I will work anywhere in this world as long as maybe I'm fixated on my working station and stuff like that. Those are some of the things we also get to look at, like which environment, apart from monetary gains, which environment goes well with my strengths. If I'm a creative, how will I like to approach, right? If uh, so, yeah, I'd say in a way, look at the long-term considerations instead of just the short-term monetary gains, because money grows with your career, right? So, and also leverage growth. You could be the best in your field. That will also come with its own advantages. Instead of just looking at maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, look at the entire picture. 10 years, give it a decade. Yeah.
Yeah, I think now that you've said uh, in Kiswahili we say mwaga mtama kwenye kuku wengi. So in essence, here, I think from my perspective, let me just say from my perspective, the needs maybe that I had then when I was trying to figure out, okay, do I choose clinical? Do I choose industry? Do I choose academia? I think uh, just from the point of introspection, there was that aspect of okay, where am I right now in terms of number one, let me say the basic needs. So that's obviously what you want to fulfill at that moment. So your basic needs. So in this case, my basic needs would be, okay, do I have food covered? Do I have my clothing, my shelter, my security covered? Okay. So for that to happen, there is obviously some monetary value that needs to be like traded for those things. So given the space that I was in, I figured out, okay, perhaps then the money from internship would could fulfill this need at this point in time. But then life goes on, and you start having more needs, and then you have to figure out, okay, in order for me to address this need, how much do I need? How much should I have in my pocket in order to meet that demand? And that now comes with the idea of, okay, where can you do the trade-off? So earlier on, let me say earlier on, it is very easy to fulfill this need where you are within the clinical space, because when you're coming from a clinical background, it is easy for you to get a clinical job to address this need, these basic needs that you want. So the reason I'm saying needs here is because you hinted on some other things that actually take us to rule number three, which is a bit on what we call desires. So the way I see it for rule number two, when you talk about needs, it's like, okay, what what should I do to survive? I remember there's this quote that says, make sure you have a day job, something like that. So the idea here is that no matter what you do, make sure you have that day job. Yeah, it says keep your day job. So the idea here is keep your day job so that you can be able to survive. And surviving here, what it looks like just making sure that at the end of the day, you have something to eat. I remember when I finished my internship, my one of my first stop was at a dentist, and at this point I was like, okay, I'm done with internship. Let me just pass by the dentist and then get on with my business. So it took some time until I saw the dentist. I was amongst the last patient for that day. So when I was with the dentist, you normally say you sort of open up to your dentist, even just beyond opening up your buccal cavity. So the idea here was he opened up on how difficult it is for the current generation to see it through this medical practice because of the changes that have really happened over time, and this hasn't made, like, let me say, medicine or clinical practice as much as lucrative as it used to be seen way back. So he said that earlier on you will suffer. And that's what he said plainly. He said that earlier on you will suffer, but later on you will see the benefits of this course or of this training. So he said, no matter what you do, make sure you survive within these early few years. And for me, what that looked like, it looked like, okay, make sure you just meet your basic needs within this first 2, 3 years. So for me, the idea will be, if you are choosing now between industry, clinical, and academia, especially earlier on, you need to pick one that will at least make sure you survive by meeting your basic needs at the end of the day. I don't know how that sounds. That sounds.
No, that's I think you have captured it. Most people from experience, I have gotten to observe that they jump into industry with the notion that okay, right now I need to satisfy my basic needs. Rather, I need to meet my basic needs. So, what is the quickest place that I can cash out? And that's the industry. You get in and you're hands on, and anything thrown your way, you'll handle it as long as at the end of the month there's something coming your way. And then now there's the other uh, side of the coin where people get to look at, okay, I can suffer, I can choose to suffer, like delayed gratification. I can choose to suffer these first 2 years, 3 years with my meager savings, but I do know that it shall pay well at the end of maybe half a decade or a decade. And then now, talking about desires, I'd go on and say, like, maybe let's assess how or what you think or feel about stuff like maybe teaching, publishing, that is given academia, right? Um, Maybe interacting with people, traveling, maybe fundraising, talk about grants and stuff. And then there's also the aspect of negotiating with funders, with uh, partners, managing teams. Things like this really should go into consideration when you want to choose between the two fields or the three fields rather. Now, since I don't want to dwell so much on desires, seeing that whatever we have mentioned, we should be talking about personality more or less, because your personality, I do believe, will determine a lot of these things. How you feel about it. Are you good with teams? Are you good with working as a lone wolf in a manner, so to speak? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what you have.
Okay, so just to recap, so rule one we said assess your qualification. Then rule two we say assess your needs. So for here we said that number one, at least you want to get your basic needs in check. And you alluded to the fact that some people might perceive to maybe industry academia being sort of a place where you can easily cash out, but that might not prove the case because the market may look different, and this also depends on whatever you have access to. And then we said now that this closely rule two, assessing your needs, closely ties now to rule three, which is assessing your desires. Now, for desires, you sort of mentioned some things also when you were talking about the needs as well. You mentioned that there are things such as ceiling. So how far or how long your career can go. You talked about flexibility. So this might be the working hours. Maybe I desire flexible working hours. Maybe I desire a certain particular way of working. Maybe it's night shift or during the day, something like that. And then you also mentioned something about long-term consideration. So, okay, does this fit my desires in terms of a long-term career? And I think I wanted to chime in a little bit on that. So, under the desires, something like the ceiling. Most of the time, we are, especially when you are in the clinical space, we get to see or we get to have a better perspective on how the ceiling of medical practice is because we interact with our seniors. So you'll see consultant so and so moving in this kind of way and this is maybe his lifestyle or her lifestyle. And at that point, maybe they are within, I'd argue that they are far off in their career. And to you, that might look like a ceiling in which you easily relate to. So the question then becomes, given that you are in this clinical environment and you've seen this kind of clinical ceiling, this ceiling within this, for example, consultant, is it something that your heart desires? So one thing that I normally find that medics don't have access to, especially earlier on in your career, is that you don't get to experience how the ceiling looks like for people in industry or academia, and how this ceiling might look like might be even a false narrative or even a false perspective. And for you, getting into that, you might be maybe you might have the false narrative or the false implication of what needs to be done for you to get that ceiling. So there is that trade-off. So knowing that the ceiling for your consultant, for example, is going through MEd and doing this thing, for example, in the next 6, 7, 10 years, might be something that you're comfortable with. But now the question is, knowing that someone is in industry or academia, whatever they've gone through, is it something that you are willing to go through just to get at the end of the ceiling? So are you able to go through the pain to meet that desire within this kind of field? And another thing that I just wanted to add on was now on the flexibility aspect. So this flexibility aspect comes in with the working hours as well. So in this case, think about work-life balance. So as someone who has as a who has got a bit experience of working both the clinical side earlier on and the academia stroke industry side earlier on, uh, clinical side, especially when you're starting, it's very hard for you to chase the work-life balance from the work perspective. And there is I can't remember who said this, but they say that work-life balance is normally a myth when you're starting earlier on. But when you're in the clinical space, you experience so much work that you tend to fail to draw a line where this interacts, for example, with your life. So for most medics, your work is your life, especially when you're starting earlier on. And then it becomes hard for you to map out your desires. But then on the industry and academia part, what happens is that your desires sort of you are able to articulate your desires better because the working hours aren't that much in terms of, let me say, office working hours, but you get some more hours to work on other things. So I think when you get the more hours to work on other things, these are more life implicated things. And by doing so, you are able to sort of map out your desires separate from whatever industry you are working with or academic place you're working with. So at the end of the day, even though you are working still, but you are able to find that time to draw your line of okay, this is how my desires look like, and this is what I would perhaps want compared to clinical. So clinical, it's more I'm diving deep, I'm digging in. It will take more introspection for you to have that click, like, oh, here, this is how my desires look like, and this is how perhaps I'd like to move forward. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think one thing I highlighted earlier also is the intersection of desire and personality. Those two go hand in hand. If you desire maybe flexibility in the nature of work, like you've said, maybe in the early years of clinical work, there's really no work life balance or anything like that. But you see, so is startup life. So you have to pick your poison. Yeah, there there's the infamous false dichotomy of, do you want to help people or do you want to make money? And you when you really zoom into these aspects, you will find that there's nothing like that. You can still help people and make money, or you can you can chase neither of those two. While you think you're helping people or trying to make money, you're actually doing none, because you're you are deep into either field, and there's no result that is coming through. So I'd say personality and desire go hand in hand.
Wait,
You will want to look at the
when you say, sorry, when you say personality and desire come in hand in hand, now I am thinking, do you think uh, the current personality we see in Gen Zs, as majority of us as Gen Zs, do you think uh, the generation sort of ties in with the personality and then ties in with the desire in this case? So a case in argument will be, uh, for us as Gen Zs, we are sort of used to this fast kind of dopamine hit kind of lifestyle. You want food, Uber Eats. You want to travel, Uber Boda, something like that. So how does this, or would this even translate in terms of how we view career or how we choose careers? Because at the end of the day now, when we say desire ties to personality, which is again, I think rule four, then as a Gen Z, uh, being that generation having a significant impact on my personality, does it implicate the desire of me wanting, for example, success very fast, something like that? Is it is it something that you think comes into play in this kind of scenario when now we think about desire, personality, and even the generation that we are in right now?
of course. That's why I said there's something about delayed gratification when I was talking about those who wish to be paid right now and those who wish to be paid in huge sums. It doesn't matter when. Those are two different scenarios. There are people who wish to be paid right now, and more often than not, the sums won't matter, won't go into the mathematics. It's just like I need my basic needs right now, and to be satisfied right now. And you have talked of the fast reward system, right? Like I want to plant my crops right now, and I want them to grow right now, and I need them, and I need to harvest tomorrow. It feels like I'm always chasing a deadline that's a bit too soon, and like the fast-paced life. In short, I can tell you for a fact, there's no okay from where I stand. There's no fast reward in either academia or industry. So then maybe something else that I do not have the expertise to speak on. Maybe something else because I know even for startups you have to put in the work. Unfortunately, um, if you want to have because if you look at, for example, industry, there's the aspect of hierarchy. I know it's also in academia, but in academia, I like the author of this paper also referred to it. It's more of a, a Hollywood sort of setup where it's like a star system, a star is born kind of thing, where you'll be able to step out if you are, or stand out rather, sorry. You'd be able to stand out if you are that star. If, what grants have you earned us, right? How many papers have you authored, right? The publish or perish kind of culture. It's really rooted in academia, but I'll let you speak on that. Which you'll find that it also needs time, right? It also needs time. And if you look at the industry, there's the whole aspect of hierarchy where you get to get more responsibility as time moves on. Maybe after 3 years, you'll be promoted to position B. After 3 years or 2 years, promoted to position C, D, something like that. And you get to get more managerial responsibilities the more you climb up the ladder. And that also takes time. So I'd say the whole aspect of, I don't know, is it get rich quick, if I can say, or the fast paced life, or like reward me right now kind of expectation for the Gen Zs? We'll struggle a bit with that, but also I'd say not so much. It's not such a bad thing because the AI, with the advent of AI, the pace of doing things has increased. So if you are very creative, if you know how to move fast, you can take advantage of that. Maybe what will be What you'll need a bit of hard work maybe is in uh, deploying or distribution. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, when it comes to startups and building stuff and like that. But I digress. When you're talking about industry and academia, I'd say I don't know. Both need patience. From where I stand, both need patience. I
Yeah,
don't know what you're saying.
yeah. I think what majority of the audience, for example, coming from clinical side might not know is what kind of patience then is needed for you to express within industry or academia. Because when I'm coming from the clinical side, I want to choose. I might say, okay, I will be patient and take this, for example, 2, 3 years to work as an MO, so that maybe I'm saving money to figure out, do I want to do my USMLE or something like that, or do I want just to apply for a residence program locally and go about with it? You see, so that's how patience might look like for someone who is in the clinical space. So then the question becomes, what kind of patience do you need to portray when you're thinking about industry and academia? And you've sort of mentioned this, and you've mentioned this in the sense that, okay, in industry and academia, they might not, the pecking order might look different. So in academia, maybe your patience might come off as a result of you honing your skills to be able to be that kind of star writer or star author or that kind of star grant applicant. So that means that you need to actually learn to take your time to figure out how to write grants, how to write papers. So that's the kind of patience that needs to be expressed in the academia side. And now the question to the audience would be, is this something that you're willing to do? In industry, the patients might look like that kind of hierarchical climbing. So I come in as a junior. Maybe I come in as a, for example, as an intern. Then I come in as a junior employee. Then I rise. So that also becomes some patience that you need to exercise within this other environment. So I think for the audience, then the question comes: is your personality able to handle this kind of patients in this different environments, and what is comfortable for you at the end of the day? I think now that I'm thinking about it, this personality point just can go on and on, because the personality can even come down to, for example, how do you express yourself. Either are you creative in some sense? So for example, I might argue that within the clinical space, there is no much room for you to thrive on creativity, so that maybe you can go on and on. Eh, Arguably, this creativity might maybe thrive in academia, so that you can be a good writer or maybe a good grant applicant, you see. So maybe creativity in this space might be better expressed within the academia or industry space compared to clinical space. So I think an interesting bit will be, what kind of personality then is required to thrive in these different places? Should you go with different personalities across the board or something like that? I remember one of the interesting bits that we used to be told in undergrad is that what makes the hallmark of a good doctor is their availability. So in this case, I'm thinking of, okay, how then can availability tie in with the personality? Availability doesn't just mean the person needs to be there physically, but how available are you to your patients? Maybe even the practice itself. So it's sort of dedicating yourself to this skill. How available are you to do that? And is that really necessary for you to feel comfortable within that space earlier on? So I think assessing your personality becomes a very, very important point. It might just pass on top of people's head, because at the end of the day, not very many people are thinking, okay, how is my personality? How do I behave in this kind of environments? But it's that quiet thing that runs deep, that helps you figure out, okay, do I want to go academia? Do I want to go to industry? Do I want to stick to my clinical practice? Yeah, I think so. maybe just to tie in these first four rules. Rule number one, assessing your qualifications, assessing your needs, assessing your desires, and assessing your personality, sort of tie very well as one lamp for someone to consider when making this decision earlier on.
I agree. I agree. Now, if you, I think they all boil down to the self.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Mm,
Yeah. If you were to split them, we would have said, okay, now the phase A or part A, we have looked at the self, where we have considered all those kind of things, desires, personality. And then now we could jump on to
rule five.
maybe another part where now we look at the industry, not the industry in terms of, okay, the 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 external environment, let me call it that, because already when we talk about industry in this context, we mean something else. Now we are done with the self. Let's look at the external environment. When you're looking at the external environment, we'd like to talk about maybe the alternatives. We'd like to talk about evolution, which is now timing. We'd like to talk about long-term planning, which ties with evolution. So I don't know, Doc. Maybe you take us through alternatives, right? When we say alternatives, what do we mean? Do we mean I, as a medical practitioner, jumping onto maybe plumbing or welding, or what? Or what do we mean by alternatives? Is it something still within the niche, professional niche, but sort of not the traditional way? Or what do we mean by alternative?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Let us try and keep these alternatives based on within the niche space, because now if we talk about plumbing, then we can say that alternatives are very, very, very many. So let us
Right.
so when I say, for example, in this case, if the alternatives are clinical, industry, and academia, then how alternatives would present in this case? They would present in terms of opportunities. So sometimes you might be at a place where industry makes sense for you. Maybe your personality and every other thing that we've discussed makes you go towards the industry space. But in this case, it's not an alternative for you. It doesn't, there's no opportunity that makes you go down that path. So in this case, is that then an alternative? Then the question now becomes, how do you make this alternative viable for you to for it to be a path for you to go down along? So unless you are very sure about yourself, so this gives in the fact that you've been well advised. You've especially when you have mentors. In this case, you have mentors. You you believe in yourself, let me say something like that. Then those alternatives, be it clinical, industry, and academia, you can easily pick one and sort of run away with it. So when you're considering this range, we're trying to limit it between industry, academia, and clinical. So even though I am ready to go down the clinical path, when I look at this other side and I see that, okay, I have mentors within the industry space, I have people who I have access to, I have opportunities which I have access to, then that becomes an alternative in which I can consider going down. But if this door is not open, then it becomes hard for me to start thinking about the possibility of going down that route. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. That makes sense. So how about while we are looking at alternative, yeah, I'd say uh, what else would you consider? Like, yeah, maybe I want to go for medical journalism or science journalism, but now it's like there are many large language models nowadays that can just as well write. So, what am I looking at when I'm looking at alternatives? That's timing, maybe the evolution of the field. Could it help me?
Yeah, so
It
yeah, I think now that's where alternatives actually tie with timing, as you've said, because uh maybe this door is not opened. maybe it will be opened in another phase. So that's when the timing bit comes in. So I might be drawn into industry, but because I'm starting earlier on, I'll say, okay, let me let me take my time within the clinical space, and then jump ship later on to maybe academia or industry. So then I have considered the timing. So one of the interesting things that perhaps maybe happened to me was or one I felt that happened personally to the field I was in, it was, I think, early 2025 when the new US administration came into office, and they made executive orders that really influenced how NIH handled their budgets. So you see, at that time, I would I would really be I would really, in terms of advising people, I'd really tell people who want to go within the industry and academia space sort of to hold off their horses, because we are having increased NIH budgets being cut by by the administration. So that means that there will be probably be layoffs. The projects will probably stall. Some will come to a close, and then what? How will you then meet your basic needs and all that kind of stuff? So when you're a clinician, then you have to consider that, okay, given that these alternatives exist, is it the right time for me to do this? The right time, one might argue, the right time might be at the moment you have the lowest risk, and then you figure out, okay, given that right now I don't have risk in terms of maybe family, maybe financial burden, something like that. Maybe it's not that much, and you can take a big chunk of your risk. Then why not? Perhaps then that timing then makes sense for you. So you really need to consider the whole market. Yeah. In this case, actually, the word here would be you need to look at the market, how the market looks like, and then figure out, okay, what's the pattern? How are things moving? Is it the correct moment to make this jump, or stick to this train and maybe come off on the next station?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think with that, you have also tied it to something along the lines of long-term planning. If I had used your example, you say the new US administration came and it cut a lot of funds really from research and learning institutions. If maybe you are trying to get into research or academia, you'd panic a bit. You'd panic a bit, and maybe if you're trying to apply for scholarships, for grants, you'd panic a bit. But also, I'd say if you look at things long term, you'll realize that this is something that has been happening since way back. And that's just how government policies are. They wax and wane over time. So it's like, okay, this time maybe we are prioritizing uh, these sort of public policy. Yeah, let me say that. This sort of public policy. Then the next time we are prioritizing this sort of public policy. You want to look at how the trends have been happening over 3 decades, over 2 decades, and be like, okay, for the next decade, I think this is where I'm going to plug myself into, and this is how I'm going to approach things. So, in a manner, so to speak, are we talking about keeping our options open or locking ourselves in? What would you say now that we have dissected how things change over time, the business environment changes? That would be a good example how taxes increase and decrease, and therefore affect business environment for those who are getting into the industry bit. Yeah.
I, I'd say now in this case, what you're saying is that a career decision should be made with a long-term goal in mind. So
Precisely.
yeah, I think also what we're discussing here is career decisions earlier on and what they look like. And it's not something that you'll just get into it and just close yourself within that 1 year. It's sort of a long game. It's a long it's a long game actually that you're playing here. And I love the way you've bring in the stock market kind of thing, is that sometimes the market might be really harsh. And the question is, do you have the capabilities, or are you able to go through this phase and survive through it. So I think,
Are you anti-fragile?
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because yeah, because now even in the academia space, grants applications might not be going through during in a particular time. And then does it mean you quit, you go back to industry or a clinical? And I think one interesting bit is that when you're starting earlier on, very many people don't have this in mind. You don't even think about, okay, how does this thing look long term? Turns out you just want to survive. And yes, it's okay, but then it really takes the system to level of thinking to figure out, okay, what does the long term look like? And I think one interesting bit I love about coming from the clinical perspective is that you can easily hop through industry academia and even come back, and even you can just do maybe two at the same time. The question is, how much are you able to tolerate this as a possibility within your mind for you to execute this kind of reality? Mhm.
Yeah, I think you have talked about you have contrasted two different realities and said in a manner in a short way you said I should have that in mind that anything could go wrong at any time and I should be okay with either. So in being anti-fragile and keeping my options open and whatnot, what have you, you have reminded me of a tweet by a very close colleague I saw the other day. They were asking, in this AI era, is it okay for me to really seek employment or should I just build my own product and ship and distribute and sell and stuff like that? And and it brings me to the point that you said earlier. Keep your day job. Keep your day job. And we are not saying now, I'm assuming maybe for the audience, they don't even have that day job. So what what should they do? I'd say just maybe keep your head down and get busy. Apply for those jobs while you still consider which route to go to or to go for. It could be academia, it could be research, it could be industry, it could be just clinicals. But at the end of the day, you want to commit to one field while still having the requisite skills that can help you go back and forth laterally through these other fields. Like I could be in the industry and be a lecturer. You see, in academia, they consider me a part of them because I'm a lecturer. But in the industry, they also consider me a part of them because I practice. So I practice what I teach and I teach what I practice. Essentially, that is the balance that you want because we have already said things happen, yeah? Things hit the fan and unfortunate incidences follow. So you want to be able to, in a way, maybe move through these three sectors. And the only way to get there, I'd say, is the long-term planning. In 10 years, are you the kind of person who gets into the industry and you just become another, uh, become a person who can be automated out of their job, or do you give meaningful contributions to your industry in a manner that these these those findings or these contributions could always be published, and therefore you qualify in a way to speak in the academic sense of your industry? And or are you that person who gets into academia and all you focus on is just churning out papers that nobody will read, and maybe people will read 30 years from now, and they will be inconsequential? Or would you be that academic who gets into the academic field and you try to churn out products informed by science, which actually solve a problem for the people and help the people at large or the industry or the civilization to move forward? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think now what I'm getting from rule 8, which is keep your options open, and rule 9 is be analytic, and rule 10 is be honest with yourself. you are sort of tying something to do with strategy and tactics. So the first four we talked about them as being the self. The next three we talked about the external. And I think these last three talk about now what kind of strategies and tactics should you sort of deploy? Because when you get into this, the strategy might be I want to live out my life in academia. Okay, that's maybe a goal. So you might have a strategy in way to get that. But at the end of the day, there's this daily tactics that you need to implement. And some tactics might not be really fruitful. So here comes the idea of, okay, how analytic can I get in order to play out my tactics? And how this looks like, okay, what kind of jobs should I apply for that I can see myself through? What kind of shifts should I maybe take in order to get my way through this phase? So you need to really be on the constant lookout. You are either doing this kind of maybe even locums or short contracts within the clinical space. For industries, maybe you're looking out for adverts, you're looking out for blogs, you're looking out for things that you can really get into and sort of kind of implement within the short term. And even for academia might be how can you maybe collaborate for you to get your academic let me say skills go up and such a view before you even come like the major guy who is doing these publications. So in terms of an analytic approach, then you have to consider, okay, how do I put my skills into play within this in this short term space in order to deal with specific let me say needs at this point. So okay, I'm within the clinical space. What kind of skills can I use to maneuver this space? Okay, I'm going to the industry. Can I be analytical with this space? Can I map out and see, okay, what kind of companies are employing? What can I pivot to if this is not working out? And I think that being analytic part should be very intentional. Eh, You might be, sometimes things may not work out and it might feel harsh being within this space. And I think one of the things that happens when you are analytic, your analysis doesn't come to fruition, you tend of to develop this sort of resentment towards the space that you're in. So it really takes a lot of grace in this case to figure out, okay, where are my analysis not working out and how can I improve to take a step forward? I don't know if that's
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's about sums it, Doc.
Yeah, and also sorry, and I think that now ties with the being honest with yourself, because if it's not working, then you have to deal with that now emotional bit of, okay, the industry is not working. How can I pivot to academia? So I think that ties being honest with yourself, being analytic, and actually keeping the options open.
I think I just wanted to add that what you have already said. Because you mentioned resentment, so I was about to say, yeah, you should check your emotional response towards your field because you think this is what you want. A year down the line, no, no, this is not what I want, and so you'll self sabotage. You'll sabotage the work itself and stuff like that. So I guess that brings us to a conclusion. Maybe just to go through again what we have mentioned. The first four, we dealt with the self, where we looked at personalities, desires, um, and so forth. Then we looked at the external environment effect. The external environment effect is where you check the waxes and wanes of the evolution of whatever you want to get into, the industry, the academic field, or the clinical field. Uh, then we concluded with the analytical part and how do you keep your options open in a smart and strategic way, and be how can you be honest with yourself? Um, that all summed under strategy. So yeah, I think that's all for me.
Yeah, thank you, Doc, for joining me on this call. And I think for early career researchers, early career medics, this taking all this down might be difficult, especially when you're just trying to do it, for example, in a week or in a fortnight. So that means you need to continuously iterate as you choose between this field. And one thing I think I've mentioned is that for medicine, it's not more of you don't sort of lock yourself out once you choose academia. You can always go back to any of this. So 2, 3 years down the line, if clinical is not working for you, you can switch to industry. 2, 3 years, if industry is not working you can switch back to clinical. 2, 3 years not working for you, you can go to academia. So it's just a matter of how do you play this game. The rules are written. We're just looking for willing players. Okay. All right. Thank you, Doc. It's been lovely. Until this next time. See you.